"Sergeant Brooks, you will halt." Rain swept in sheets across the marble, pooling at the feet of SSG Elijah Brooks as he pivoted at the far end of the mat, rifle snapping with ceremonial perfection. The plaza glistened beneath the overcast, crowds pressed under umbrellas, watching. Captain Monroe Ellis's order landed sharp, slicing through the respectful hush. Brooks didn't pause. His boots struck the wet stone with their practiced weight, 30 steps, measured and unbroken. He kept his eyes forward, jaw tight, the white tomb gleaming at the edge of his vision. Ellis stepped off the colonnade, every inch the Pentagon's man, polished, crisp, impatient. He raised his voice. "This is not a request, Sergeant. Orders from higher. Halt the march." Brooks's only answer, the clean pivot, the gleaming rifle, the echo of boots against ancient stone. Rain hammered his cap and slicked the barrel in silver. A faint gasp rippled from the crowd. Claire Donovan, reporter's notepad forgotten at her side, felt her pulse hitch. A civilian among soldiers, she recognized the atmosphere had shifted, something sacred being pressed against. At the relief post, SPC Daniel Holt Reeves watched, knuckles white on his rifle sling. He swallowed, caught between the urge to intervene and the law of the line. One step across would fracture years of trust. Ellis called out again, voice rising above the rain. "You are relieved. Step off, Sergeant. This isn't a drill." Brooks stopped, just for a heartbeat. Rain trickled down his jaw. He turned his head just enough to answer, "With respect, sir. The unknown is never left alone, not by my watch." Ellis's jaw tensed. He shot a glance at SGM Harold Vance, standing beneath the colonnade, arms crossed, ring tapping, a signal of disapproval or warning. "Sergeant Major, enforce the order." Vance's eyes, steel gray, met Brooks's. He gave nothing away. Then quietly, "The guard obeys the line, sir. It's older than any of us." A hush rolled out, thick as the clouds overhead. The flag snapped in the wind. Brooks's chest rose, breath steady. His gloves soaked, tightened on the rifle's sling. Rainwater traced the grooves of the marble beneath his feet, splitting his reflection. Voiceover, low, reverent. "Not all commands are written in ink. Some are carved in ritual, in the sacrifices remembered only by those who keep silent watch. The guard's promise is simple. No weather, no war, no order breaks the chain. Only the end of memory itself." The crowd pressed forward, faces anxious, phones lowered. Holt stepped up, voice barely above the storm. "You'll be written up, Staff Sergeant." Brooks's gaze never faltered. "Let them write. I'm not here for my record." Ellis's tone hardened, words clipped. "This isn't tradition, it's protocol. There's liability, there's optics." Brooks's voice cut him off, cold and flat. "There's a man in that tomb who didn't come home. My step is for him." A low rumble of thunder rolled across the cemetery, shaking water from the branches. Claire scribbled one line in her soaked notepad, heart racing. "He marches for the dead, not the living." Vance moved forward at last, boots grinding on slick marble. He spoke quietly, not to Ellis but to Brooks. "You cross the order, you answer for it alone." Brooks let the words hang. Then, with precision born of ritual, he pivoted, rifle flashing in the rain. "That's always been the deal, Sergeant Major." Ellis's patience snapped. "Holt, relieve him now. That's an order." Holt's hand hovered at his rifle, torn, then dropped away. He shook his head, quiet. "I can't, sir. Not today." Ellis stormed forward, but Vance blocked his path, broad frame unmoving. "You go further, Captain. You'll answer to the regiment." Rain stung their faces, the plaza deadly quiet. Brooks stood alone, yet unshaken. Shoulders squared, the world faded beyond the white tomb. Ellis, nearly shouting, spat his last card. "Brooks, you're risking it all. Stop!" Brooks took a final deliberate step. His heel struck stone, a sound louder than the thunder. A single shot rang out from somewhere beyond the gates. Panic swept the crowd. A child screamed. Umbrellas collapsed. Ellis ducked instinctively. Brooks didn't flinch. His silhouette, carved in marble and rain, held steady. One man against the storm. Subscribe if you believe some traditions are worth any storm. You can stand down, Holt, or you can stand with me. The words drifted through the dim quarters, heavy with the smell of damp wool and metal polish. Rain rattled on the windows, echoing the storm above. Uniforms steamed on racks, boots lined with military precision. Tension clung to every wall. Holt pressed his back to a cold locker, jaw clenched. He stared at Brooks, his commander, his mentor, the man who'd just defied the Pentagon on sacred ground. In the far corner, Sergeant Major Vance paced slow, ring-tapping twice on a clipboard. Above them, muffled footsteps thundered, Ellis, the officer, making his way down. "You disobeyed a direct order, Staff Sergeant." "You know what comes next," Vance said, his voice low but steely. Brooks didn't blink. "There's what's right, Sergeant Major. And there's what's written. One always outlives the other." Ellis pushed through the door, uniform immaculate, shoes untouched by the rain outside. He took in the room, nostrils flared, every line of his body tense. "Private Reeves, leave us. Now." Holt hesitated, caught between fear and loyalty. He looked to Brooks, eyes searching for a cue. Brooks gave him nothing but the smallest nod. Holt lingered by the door, but Vance's stare forced him out into the corridor, where the metallic tang of wet stone followed him. Ellis spoke first. "You've humiliated the Guard. You've risked lives, embarrassed the Army in front of civilians and press. Do you even understand the damage?" Brooks's eyes fixed on a spot beyond Ellis's shoulder. "The only damage done today was to a tradition you don't understand." Vance folded his arms. "Captain, permission to speak plainly. This isn't the kind of post you can suspend by memo. The Guard doesn't march for a crowd or for show. We march for the ones who never come home." Ellis cut him off, voice sharp. "If you won't enforce Army order, I will. Brooks, you're relieved. You will report for disciplinary action pending review. One more step on that plaza and you'll answer to a court-martial." Brooks's voice barely above a whisper. "Understood, sir. But I haven't taken my last step." Ellis's face twisted with anger. "Do you want your legacy to be mutiny?" Brooks met his gaze at last. "No, sir. I want it to be memory." Thunder boomed overhead, vibrating through the cinder-block walls. The silence that followed was heavier than any command. Vance, eyes narrowed, searched Brooks's face for weakness but found none. Ellis straightened his uniform, every movement stiff. "If Reeves follows your example, his career's finished. Think about what you're doing to your men." Brooks turned to Vance. "He can stand down, or he can stand with me. That's his to decide." Vance said nothing. He watched as Ellis stormed out, boots slapping against wet concrete, the sound bouncing down the hallway like a warning. In the echoing quiet, Brooks faced Holt, who'd slipped back inside, rainwater dripping from his cap. Holt's hand trembled, but his chin lifted. "Sir, I'm with you, wherever this goes." Brooks allowed the faintest trace of pride to flicker in his eyes. Lightning split the sky, casting stark shadows over the silent rifles. The ritual was broken, but something older, heavier, was building in its place. Tomorrow, everything would change. Subscribe to honor those who march even when ordered to stop. The plaza was empty, but for the storm, and two sentinels refusing the darkness. Holt adjusted his soaked beret with shaking fingers, stepping onto the mat beside Brooks. Thunder rolled over the headstones. Lightning flickered, turning the marble white gold for an instant before plunging the world back into rain and shadow. "Ready, Holt?" Brooks's voice was steady, even as rain carved rivers down his face. "Ready, Staff Sergeant." Their boots struck the stone in perfect unison, each pace defiant, ritual, sacred. The sound echoed across the empty grounds. No crowds now, just Arlington and the sky watching. Rain slapped against their uniforms, soaking through the thick wool, leaving cold, heavy lines pressed against their skin. Brooks's gloves squeaked faintly on the rifle, every motion exact, unbroken. From beneath a yew tree at the edge of the plaza, Sergeant Major Vance stood silent, watching through the sheets of rain. His hands were buried in his pockets, ring-tapping once, twice. He should have stopped them. Duty said to intervene, but pride and something older held him still. Lightning split the sky again, illuminating the rows of white stones, perfect, endless, unwavering. Holt swallowed, jaw clenched. He matched Brooks's pace step for step, his doubt replaced by something fierce and clear. "Why do we do it, Staff Sergeant?" he asked, voice low, almost lost in the storm. Brooks's reply was a whisper, but every word cut through the rain. "Because no one else will. Because the dead still wait for us to keep faith." The next step was slower. Thunder rumbled, boots cracking against the stone, 2 soldiers against eternity. The rifle gleamed in Brooks's hands, rain streaming off the bayonet, each droplet catching the storm's wild light. Far back behind a column, Claire Donovan raised her phone but hesitated, choosing to watch with her own eyes instead. Her breath fogged in the cold, the words she'd written smeared by rain. Vance's silhouette shifted, a living shadow behind the curtain of water. His jaw worked, fighting orders he no longer believed in. He watched as Brooks and Holt reached the far line, pivoted, and marched again. Not for applause, not for protocol, but for memory. The plaza was a stage, the only audience the dead in the storm. Brooks stopped. Holt mirrored him. For a moment the only sound was the rain's relentless drum. "We keep marching," Brooks said softly, "until we're ordered by someone who understands what it means to stop." A crash of thunder. Close, too close. Light exploded over the tomb, for a heartbeat making Brooks and Holt seem carved in marble, ageless, defiant. And then, as the flash faded, a third figure appeared in the light. Vance, his face unreadable, his uniform dark with rain. He was watching. And now he knew. The ritual was broken, but the line had never been more real. Brooks sat stiff-backed at the long table, uniform immaculate, gloves folded on the smooth wood before him. Holt flanked his side, hands clenched in his lap. The air was sharp with the smell of stale coffee and starch. Morning sun bled through the tall window, striping the room and making the army flag ripple in gold. Captain Ellis leafed through a folder, jaw grinding, pen tapping with irritation. Across from him, Sergeant Major Vance stood at attention, face unreadable, eyes lingering on Brooks just a moment too long. "This inquiry is convened to address Staff Sergeant Brooks's insubordination," Ellis announced, voice clipped. "Your actions have put the regiment at risk and undermined direct orders from command. You will answer for it now." Brooks's reply was measured, quiet. "I did what was right, not what was easy." Vance's ring tapped once, then again. "Sir, permission to speak on record." Ellis barely glanced up. "Proceed." Vance looked only at Brooks as he spoke. "The guard's duty is to the unknowns and to memory. Not to headlines, not to optics. Last night I witnessed 2 soldiers do what no memo could command. March for the fallen, with nothing but rain for witness." Oh, silence stretched, broken only by the scraping of Ellis's pen. "This is not the time for sentiment. The Pentagon has issued guidance. No ceremonial marches, effective immediately, at any tomb site in the country." A gasp ran through the room. Holt's breath hitched. Brooks's face stayed hard as stone. "You're saying," Holt managed, "the tradition is just paused? Because of optics?" Ellis's answer was cold. "Because of liability, Private. Because one slip in the rain, one video gone viral, and the Army answers for more than lost tradition." Brooks stared at the table, fists curling. Vance's eyes flickered with regret, but he stood silent. Claire Donovan sat in the back, pen frozen, eyes wide. The story she'd come for had dissolved into something deeper, raw, a country's promise breaking in daylight. Ellis's voice rang out. "As of this moment, no guard will march at the tomb. Anyone who does will answer directly to court-martial. That is all." Brooks met Vance's gaze, a silent question hanging in the space between them. Vance's jaw tightened. Holt slid his gloves across the table, voice trembling. "Sir, what now?" Brooks's answer was low, steady. "The world watches what we do next." Outside, the sun glared down on silent marble. Inside, tradition held its breath. Dawn clawed through the mist that blanketed Arlington. Every headstone glimmered pale in the early blue. TV lights flickered on, beams slicing through the haze as the plaza filled with silent onlookers. Veterans in faded jackets, officials in dress, tourists uncertain whether to watch or bow their heads. The tomb waited at the heart of it, marble cold, flag limp in the still air. Brooks stood alone on the plaza's edge, cap under his arm, uniform immaculate, shoes mirror bright. His face looked carved from the same stone as the monument before him. Holt approached from the shadows beyond the colonnade, his steps quiet but resolute. Behind them, Vance moved into the light, his salute half raised, unreadable, as if unsure whether to bless the defiance or mourn it. They said the march was over. The order had come down, A regulation printed and distributed across the country, ending the unbroken watch. For the first time in generations, the mat at Arlington was empty. It was supposed to stay that way. But the world was watching now. Claire Donovan pressed close to the rope line, notebook clutched to her chest, pulse pounding so loud she wondered if the mics would catch it. Reporters whispered to each other, scanning the marble for any sign of movement. Brooks's breath smoked in the icy air. He slid on his gloves, one finger at a time, gaze fixed on the tomb. Holt joined him, shoulders squared, face set with that mixture of fear and reverence reserved only for moments that might change history. "You ready for this?" Brooks's voice was barely a thread. "Doesn't matter," Holt answered, "only that it gets done." Vance watched them both, hands locked behind his back, the old ring on his finger glinting with each tremor of his hand. Ellis lingered at the far edge of the plaza, jaw clenched, unable to look away. The hour struck. Camera crews murmured, then stilled as Brooks stepped onto the mat. His boots rang against the marble, the sound echoing across the silent ranks of headstones. Holt followed, side by side, two figures cutting through mist and history, the rifles balanced in their arms, shining with oil and dew. They marched, 39 deliberate steps, each one a rejection of the order, each one a promise to the dead, every movement precise, every pivot echoing against the hollow quiet. Holt's heart hammered in his chest, but his steps were true. The whole country was watching, but only one thing mattered: the line. When they turned at the far edge, Brooks faced the tomb, chin lifted. The flag stirred overhead, caught in the new day's wind. A distant horn sounded, someone at the gates raising their hand in silent salute. The broadcast cut across every screen. In living rooms and airports, in barracks and schoolrooms, the world watched the march that shouldn't have happened. Brooks and Holt's boots landed in perfect sync, the cadence unbroken, the defiance unspoken. From the colonnade, Vance stepped forward, spine straight, his medals flashing in the dawn. He raised his right hand in full formal salute, the kind saved for heroes and funerals. For a moment, Brooks caught his eye. Pride, sorrow, and gratitude lived in that look. Then, something happened the regulations never prepared for. The crowd, first silent, began to move. A line of old veterans, medals pinned to faded lapels, slowly knelt along the rope. They lowered their heads, hats pressed to their hearts. Tourists followed, then the press. Claire Donovan's hand shook as she wrote a single word: courage. Ellis tried to step forward to say something, but the hush was complete. All that remained was the sound of boots on marble and the crack of the flag in the wind. Holt felt the old fear leave him. The line would not break. At the mat's edge, Brooks paused. The sunrise hit him full in the face, turning his silhouette golden. He called out, voice echoing, "This post does not yield, not today, not ever." The words rang out over the cemetery, drifting between the stones carried by the wind. Holt stood beside him, unflinching. Two soldiers, one legacy. Vance's salute did not falter. Ellis lowered his gaze, the fight gone out of him. Brooks and Holt pivoted, ready to march again, their boots writing a new tradition into the marble. In that moment, something ancient was restored, not by command but by courage. "Let them march," someone whispered, a prayer, a demand, a hope, and everywhere those watching found themselves believing. When the broadcast faded, the echo of those steps lived on, long after the sun climbed high and the flag flew bold against the sky.